you guys all know me, so I'll just do a really quick intro in case there's anyone who watches the recording and it's like, who the heck is Karuna? So quickly, I am the founder of Mind Oasis. And if you don't know the story of that, I'll tell you sort of the short version. In 2017, I got married. And about a month after I married my husband, I looked at him and I said, I think I need to go to the desert by myself for a month and do a meditation retreat. And he was like, okay. But he was really supportive eventually. And I spent a month with my mind and realized that I'm certifiable. And at about week 3, I was starting to sort of stabilize and something just sort of came through me. And I'm mentioning this now in relationship to the intensive because something happens when you create a real intention. It's one thing to sit down and it's one thing to have a meditation practice. It's one thing to have a gardening or a horseback riding practice. It's another thing when you put your mind into a space where you're like, for the next period of time, I'm going to really work with my mind and see what comes of that. And so there's something, I think, energetically that happens in our life when we kind of place our attention there and create an intention. And without really knowing that that's what I was doing when I went out to the desert in that hot trailer, that's what came out of my meditation retreat, was this idea that beyond space, long before COVID and long before it became really popular, beyond physical space, that we could have potent community, not just like, oh, talking heads on a screen, but where I have friendships with people that I realize I've actually never physically hugged because I haven't physically met them. And yet they are some of my best friends. So it's really interesting. So that's sort of like the birth of Mind Oasis, and it's sort of like why we're all here. So last year, we decided to add an intensive teacher training offering to what we do at Mind Oasis. And it was really kind of a twofold process. On the one side, we could have made it a teacher training, but I felt like we might lose a whole bunch of people who would have really benefited from what it feels like to be a part of an intensive. And I'll talk a little bit about that. And then the other side was to just have an intensive, but because we have community meditation, I'm always looking for new teachers. So it seemed like we could do something where we had 2 tracks. And so last year was our first attempt. We started out with 20 students, and by the end we had 18. And out of the 18, 16 are teaching, formally teaching. And the 2 that aren't had their own personal reasons. One of them was working on her PhD, and the other person, I think she was like traveling worldwide. So she taught for a while, but did not finish. So I mention all of this because whether you are interested in teaching or not, most people end up doing that. So just know that, but you don't have to. You can get just as much out of the intensive as if you didn't. So my thought was maybe we just sit just for a moment and I'll ask you a question. And it's the question that drives the intensive. So I like to be experiential, even though y'all know I talk too much, so it's a balance. So just take a good seat for a moment here, and whether you meditate with your eyes open or closed, just for this exercise, go ahead and close your eyes and feel your body. You might take 3 of those nice, big, full cleansing breaths. And then just first notice how you're feeling physically this evening. You might notice the air on your skin and your body temperature and the sensation of the 2 intermingling. And then And just for a moment here, notice how you're feeling emotionally. If there's maybe just a little excitement at possibility. And anything else. I was noticing this afternoon that things are pretty sideways at the moment here in the good old US of A. So there might be contradictory emotions present. Just take a peek. And then really notice the sounds around you. Not turning off from the world or leaving our experience, but being very present. And this drawing your attention to the crown of your head, and for a moment here, just moving through a body scan at your pace, moving down to the soles of your feet and noticing between. And once you move through your body scan, crown of head to soles of feet, everything in between, notice front and back and sides. Then just notice if there's anywhere in your body that's holding a particular amount of tension. Forehead, jaw, hips, these are usual suspects. And then draw your attention to your heart space. And first, just notice physically the sensation of your heart beating. All 360 degrees. What does your heart most long for? Allowing the answer to arise from this heart space. What does your heart most long for? And if you think it might have come from your thinking mind, again, just try to draw your attention down to the heart space, the tender spot when you see a child or a puppy or a kitten. What does your heart most long for? And tonight we'll just leave that heart's longing, whether it's a color or a word or a felt sense, just let it stay in your heart. Maybe taking a cleansing breath or two and beginning to come back into your space. Maybe feeling the air on your skin in your room or your space. Feeling the physical sensation of your body. the tenderness of your heart. And when you're ready, blinking open eyes if they're closed. Hi, Bev. Welcome. So after 6 months, many of our participants knew what their heart's longing really was. And to me, when I look back at our time together, it's funny, I didn't know that that's exactly what they would get out of it, though that's how I started the whole retreat weekend. So we start in retreat over 3 days, and you do it from your home. And long before COVID, that's how we did it. And we really start the first 2 months is all about personal growth. And I think some of you were in my compassion workshop where I talked about, like, I am a wild child. And I really appreciate boundaries. And what we do in the first 2 months is we go through tried, true, really solid meditation practices that kind of feel like rules and boundaries. But it will allow you, when you sit for the rest of your life, whether you're alone or you're in a group, to sit well. So even if your practice goes to hell that day, which it does for me often, I know the right technique. It's always at my fingertips. As soon as I can get, like, back from the beach of Tahiti, I know exactly what I need. So when people say the phrase, like, I'm not a good meditator, you will not say that phrase anymore at the end of 6 months. That I would bet my life on. You might struggle. That would make you human. but you're not going to be a bad meditator. You're going to have every tool you need. And that's what we really start with in the first 2 months. And so the first 2 months feel kind of like rules and boundaries, but it also, I think, creates a lot of freedom. Because on the other side of rules and boundaries is this immense freedom to explore and to make your practice your own. And that's the first 2 months. And because we start out with what does your heart most long for, it kicks into place also the exploration of what does my heart long for? And it might be surprising. It might be different than what you think it is. It might change. And we also spend some time kind of cleaning up our act. So we also will explore, like, what you want to give up and what you want to take up. And I think that that's a useful exercise to do throughout our life. Sometimes we're just doing things because we've always done them. And this will be kind of a line in the sand saying, geez, well, if I'm going to get the most out of the 6 months, what do I want to take up and what do I want to give up? I was trying to remember if I could give you an example of what it was for me during the intensive. I think I just practiced more, but I don't remember what I gave up. Maybe anger and resentment towards my husband, who knows, something like that. The second 2 months, so the middle period, is going to be a little bit different this year. Last year, we had a wonderful woman come in and she did a workshop on, I think it was called Spiritual Activism 101. And it really stirred the pot. And as I was reflecting back about this year, I'm not entirely sure anyone needs their pot stirred anymore, to be honest with you. The pot has been stirred. So if you know Sheena Brockington-Taylor, she's both a board member and a teacher on Mind Oasis. She's on Thursday evenings. And she will be bringing a wonderful social justice 3-part workshop during that second period of time. And we'll also do some science of meditation and some other things, because when we guide and when we engage in a meditation practice, it's one thing to sit on a cushion and to try to reach enlightenment. But how is that helpful in the world today? So one of the things that I think the intensive reflects, which if you've hung out with me, you know, is like, we got to keep it real. Like, as far as I can see, you're not monks and you're not hiding out in a cave, which has a purpose, and thank goodness for them. We're called householders. We're out in the world. How can we be of service? So the second part of the intensive is all about how can we be in service to this poor, aching world. And last year it was a little rattly, and frankly, I didn't like it. So this year we're doing things a little bit more gentle, and I'm actually very, very excited because I think that with everything that's going on with the murder of George Floyd, the absolute the issues with police, the issues that we have in our cities, the issues that I see all across the United States in particular, that we need more warriors of the heart. So I feel like that second part of the intensive is going to be a lot about how do we open our heart in meaningful, compassionate ways, not becoming a rug, nobody's walking over us, but how can we serve, and how can we serve intelligently, but from the heart. And then this last 2 months, that's what I kind of call the smorgasbord. You'll learn all the many methods there are to move into a potent practice. So the 2 words that you'll hear me say ad nauseum is that we are working to amplify and align our life. So if you, let's say you're like me and tend to get angry, if you've ever gotten really angry with your partner or your friend or, you know, parent or whatever, an animal, and you've sat down on your cushion, it's nearly impossible to meditate. So when I talk about aligning our life, what I'm talking about is what are the things that we can clean up? What are the things we can take up so that our life is in alignment? And when our life is in alignment, then we can amplify. And if it's out of alignment, it just doesn't work. So this third part is actually filled with guest teachers. And trust me, by then you'll be sick of me and you'll be like, oh, thank God we have like Michael Hewitt, who will come in and he'll talk about all of the energy centers in the body and how to work with them on your cushion. If you know Allison Joy, she's our Monday night teacher. She'll come in and she'll talk about Ayurvedic astrology, which you can have a reading to understand when you were born, like what planets you were born under. And then it is interesting how it can tell you a lot about how you act in the world, how you are in the world. Kelly Lindsay, one of my teachers, she'll come in and she'll talk about the ethics of meditation and in particular teaching meditation. Joseph, my husband, will come in and he'll teach us walking meditation, which is rad. We'll have someone come in and do something around mindfulness. I don't know who it is yet. We'll have someone come in and teach us all about eye rest, yoga nidra. And I think Gina De La Chanay will do something with maybe Qigong and movement like that. So you'll get wonderful other traditions that come in to round out your training. And then as far as teaching, it's very hands-on, and I will throw you into the deep end of the pool very quickly and unapologetically. It was really interesting. I got a little bit of feedback from the current teachers on my, feedback form. And they're like, well, we kind of would have liked to have had a little more time to have people like in our peer group to work with. And I'm going to listen, and I'm going to say, for those who want to do that, we'll set that up once. But the truth of the matter is, by week 9, you will have what you need. I will come to your first teaching experience. I will give you honest feedback. And then I will invite other peers, the other people in the intensive, to all come to one another's teachings to give feedback. Because I think you learn more from your peers. If I come in and tell you what I think, I don't think it's as useful, frankly. Yeah, and so you'll teach 6 times over a period of 4 months. And by the end, you will be a stellar teacher. If you like our teachers, they were all trained by me, and I think they're fabulous. I go to their classes and I'm very proud. So that's how you'll come out the other side. It can feel a little like a fish out of water, but it's meditation. It's okay. And you're in a community and you're loved. And if that scares you to death, you're perfectly poised for success. And then I guess the last thing I'll just say before I can open it up to some questions is you will have a reading list, and you will have some times that I'll ask you to read things by, but we're not going to get into the readings in our time together. There isn't time to do that. And that was one other piece of feedback. People were like, well, wait, I read the book, but we never talked about it. Yes. If you want to get together with your peers and discuss, I should have made that clearer last time. I'm doing it this time. That's great. But really, the readings are just supposed to sort of be an extra augment of knowledge to what you'll learn experientially when we're together. Oh, and I think the other thing that people sometimes had questions about last year, it's like, well, I'm really busy. Like, I have a life, I have children, I have partners, I have things that have to happen. And my answer is, you just do your intensive the way you do you. My request is that you put down the dates. So we meet on Monday evenings every other week from 6:30 until 8:30 Central. And I ask that they're sacred, like that you just say, I'm going to show up. If you never read a thing, I don't care. If you don't decide to teach, great. If you are the person who keeps a journal the whole time, wonderful. Personally, I always start the journal. I never finish the journal. So there's my true confession. I assign it and then I'm totally shitty at it. So this is your intensive, and what you put out is exactly what you're going to get in. What you get in is what you're going to get out, whichever way. It probably works both ways symbiotically. So that's what I've got for you. Do you have any questions?
I'll let the ladies go first. I've got a list of questions. So if any of you ladies have any, go ahead first.
Go ahead, Mark. You probably have questions that, we want to hear the answer to anyway. So if you have a list, go for it.
Okay, rock on. So like here, let me see which one I'm most anxious to find out the answer for. I guess, so like laying versus sitting while teaching, is there a mandatory like position we need to sit? And also for our classes that we may possibly teach, or the 4 I think you said that are mandatory to teach a minimum of 4, are we able to like I have tuning forks and like crystal quartz singing bowls and stuff,
Yeah.
so I want to know, do I have free reign to like incorporate those into the meditations?
Great question.
And like the poems you guys do are like, obviously they all probably choose their own poems and stuff. I was just kind of curious to know, because I feel more comfortable and I tend to sink into my meditations more when I lay down compared to as sitting crisscross style, because it's like kind of tight on my like hips and legs and gets tense, and then I feel pressure in my back. I don't know. I'm pretty new at meditation.
That's all.
Like a stretched out.
This is good. So I heard 3 questions and I'll address all 3. So the first question is, like, as a participant in the intensive, when we meditate, you sit, lie down, however you are most comfortable. So last year we had more than one person who had chronic pain, and they oftentimes were off camera and lying down. I have to have a few people on camera or it gets really weird, but for the people, when they were experiencing pain, they were off camera. And whether they were in pain or not, if their preferred choice to lay down is to lie down, that is perfectly fine. That's a great way to meditate. It's one of the 4 ways that the Buddha said we can meditate, right? Lying down, sitting, standing, walking. So the second part of your question is, when you're a newbie teacher, no, you don't get to do any of the fun stuff. It's going to feel like there's a structure. You're going to have a script. You don't have to go by the script 110%, but you can't go haywire quite yet, because there are specific ways that we create a safe container for the people who are attending classes. And so you'll be teaching on community meditation, and we keep things relatively straightforward when we're learning. So for those 6 instances, the answer is no. However, as you know, because you go to Lena's class and you go to Maria's class, so Lena oftentimes, I don't know what the hell she's doing, crystal things out of the forehead. And she's the only one I let do that, by the way, because she has a handful of people who come every week to her classes because that's what they're looking for. And if somebody else comes to that class and it's not what they're into, they're never going to come back, which is totally fine. They're going to go to somebody else's class. They're going to come to my class, which is much more boring. So, but like Maria has Mantra Mondays. Maria's been having 10 people attend her classes. Why? Because people enjoy singing with Maria, and that's her shtick. So if you have tuning forks and crystal bowls and you can demonstrate that you're a solid teacher who knows how to create safe space, then you will have that opportunity when you begin to really teach and you're compensated for teaching. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you. That's awesome.
Sure. So we're going to kind of roll things back to real bare bones basics, but what's that going to do? It's going to give you a lot of freedom to really understand what's going on in your practice. And that's where the amplify really happens. And I think out of the 18 people who finished the intensive, I would guess 100% would say that happened for them. And you're all welcome to ask those folks, you're in community meditation with them. You can always say, did anyone take the intensive? I'm just wondering about your experience. Please lean on them. Yeah. Anyone else have questions? Bev, do you have a question? I can't see your face, so I'm not. And feel free if you need to type.
Yeah, no, I was having trouble getting in, so I just closed off the video because it keeps freezing on me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I don't know what's going on, but it's really windy here, so that could be it. So my question, I think you already answered it actually, is that it's every other week for the weekly, and the time commitment was really more my questions. I looked on the website as far as like journaling requirements and community meditation, but I wasn't sure about the weekly kind of class format time.
Yeah, so it's every other Monday. It's over 6 weeks, so it actually ends up being 12 sessions. It's interesting. It sounds like such a big commitment, but that's what I mean. Like, it's why we don't discuss the books, really. The books are augmenting. They're complementing what we're learning at the time. But like, I'm really teaching for my portion, and then we'll have all of these wonderful guest teachers come in. As far as journaling, I'm going to give you guys kind of a fire hose of information, and then this is a wonderful opportunity for you to look within you and say, this is what I can do. And you'll come to me and say, I think I can only do blah, blah, blah. And I'll give you the total Pope's blessing. And I'll say, please just do what you can and feel good about it. Like, what a wonderful thing to put up a boundary and say, this is how I can participate. And that's just fine.
Okay. Right. That was more my concern of I didn't want to bite something off of that was just not workable and then get partway through and it's like, oh, this isn't a fit.
Yeah, and if you are one of the handful of people who come to me, so 2 people left, but I think probably 5 people came to me at some point and said, I'm not sure I can keep doing it. And I just said, take your foot off the pedal. Come to community meditation. It's good for you anyway. Come to the classes and do that.
Right.
What if that's
Okay,
enough?
I love community meditation, so that part I have no concern about.
Good.
Yeah, I love it.
Any other questions for you, Beth?
No, that's pretty much it. Those were great questions, Mark.
Yeah, yeah. Kimber, what about you?
I just had one question. I'm excited about the requirement to do some sort of give back, some kind of I forget what you termed it.
I think it was Seva, probably. It was a service project.
Yeah, yeah. And so I'm just, I mean, I have some ideas myself, but I'm really interested to hear what some of the service projects were from last year.
You know, it's really funny. We didn't do any. I think it was like the last week and I looked back and I was like, holy shit, we never did the service projects. Like, I don't know. It's just like sort of it. I think we had so much going on, but this year we will be doing service projects. With an intention, I left it on there. My intention was that everyone would spend a few hours connecting the social justice aspect of the curriculum to a project. And because that part of the intensive last year was a little rocky, it was pretty rocky. I think the service project just kind of disappeared. My original intention was really that we would go through something impactful around what does it mean to be a warrior, a compassion warrior, and how can we maybe bring meditation into a space where meditation practices don't exist right now. And so I know that the way that Sheena is scheduling her workshop, it's going to be the 1 week that's a little bit different, but it's with intention. And we'll know shortly exactly which week it'll be so you can plan it. But it'll be like Monday night, we get together and have sort of a thought-provoking discussion. Wednesday, we do a check-in where we start to think about some action items that we can personally take, like what's one thing we could do with our life. And then I can't remember what Friday is. I think Friday is like a discussion amongst everyone. So it's structured in such a way that then that one thing that we think we can personally do in the world, then we can connect that with the service project. So I feel like this year, I'm actually very excited about this portion of the intensive. I did forget to mention one thing. I just realized, and I guess I should mention it. So there is an in-person retreat, inshallah, with COVID. And it would be, I think I'm saying the first week in March. Our intention is that it'll be at Sunshine Mountain Lodge, which is up by my house. It's about an hour from DIA. It's a part of the tuition. So the tuition is $2,800 and it includes this 3-night retreat at the lodge. And it's at the end because by then you'll have formed a ton of friendships and you'll be so excited to meet everyone. And because our last year's retreatants were robbed of their retreat because it was scheduled 2 weeks after COVID hit and everything shut down, many of our current community meditation teachers will be there too. So basically it'll be a huge Mind Oasis Love Fest. And then we'll provide transportation to and from DIA. So what you're responsible for paying is to get to the retreat and home from the retreat. And we'll help you with the rest of that. And then for folks who might need to do a scholarship or might need to do a little work study, we'll just figure it out. We'll figure out if maybe we can do a 50-50 or something like that, but it'll all work out and it'll be fine. But more than anything, you'll want to start prepping your mind that there's this commitment that you're going to do, that you're going to show up and take those 3 days for yourself. And then we put on an optional extra day to go to Rocky Mountain National Park and go to Estes Park and have a nice dinner together and just celebrate for people who can stay that extra day. And we'll go hiking and go see elk, maybe a moose. You'll probably see a moose at Sunshine Mountain Lodge, I would hope. Yeah.
I'm glad you addressed that because that was one of my questions. Like if you don't have enough money to make the retreat or whatever. So that's cool. I was wondering, what it's the 4th, 5th, and 6th or something like that, or no, the intensive starts the 4th, correct?
Mid-September. I'm going to say it's
Cool.
like 11th, 12th, 13th. It's well after Labor Day. I
Awesome.
actually am gone the month of August, and so I needed to give
Nepal, right?
No, I'm in
Oh,
theory going to Poland, but I don't know. It's still close.
cool.
It
I'm
seems
Polish. Have
the last
fun.
name it gave it away. Jane, did you have a question? You looked like you leaned in.
I leaned into unmute. I just, when you were talking about price, if you pay it all up front, is it 2,800 still? It's the same price
No,
whether
it's
you
like
pay.
I think you save $120.
Okay.
I think it's if you do the 6-month plan, you put in your little deposit of $280. I shouldn't say little; that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money for me, but I just mean it's compared to the larger amount, and then it's like I think $420 a month. And if you need, so for Mind Oasis, the discounts are difficult. This is one of the places that actually helps to fund community meditation. So like we're always using fee-based classes to help pay for things that maybe the budget is higher than the income, let's put it that way. But what's easier for us is people who have the means to pay the full amount, we can always work with you to extend your payout. So we had people who took 12 months to pay the amount, and that was just fine, because then we would just know that once a month we had that money coming in. So it's a little bit easier. We can do scholarships, we can do work study, but it's a little bit easier on our budget to actually have the full amount, but to have it, we're okay with having to pay it out. This year, we are saying that if you choose the payout option, that whether you finish or not, you have to pay it out.
Okay.
It's just good business. And I feel a little sad saying that, but it really, the intensive it's intense on me. So it's a lot of my own personal time, and it really is a source of good income for our nonprofit. So that's just kind of how it is.
Okay. Thanks.
But we always say, don't ever let money stand between you and amplifying and aligning your practice. So you just come to me and you say, hey, this is what I can do. And I say, okay. And we figure it out from there. Okay.
Okay. So if we fill out the application by July 15th, then we find out after that if we're going to be able to do it and all of that. You just pay the deposit to do for the application. Is that okay?
Yeah. And to be honest with you, why does that matter? Right. I mean, like, why would we care? And, but here's the truth of the matter is we all know that when we have just a little bit of an investment in something, it shifts something.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the application, there are a couple of questions just to make sure that folks feel like they're mentally prepared, because you will find some shifts. I don't think anyone went through, including me, the intensive last year and didn't feel shifts. For me, it was amazing because I got to see my faults as a leader, like the places that I really needed to work on. And so I experienced a lot of personal growth, but I can tell you in December, it was not comfortable at all, like for a solid 3 weeks. And you're going to have that. You're going to have some times where the rubbing of the stones happens. And I just want to make sure that, you have enough of that tough thing that you have to be able to hang in there. But we have lots of resources too. So I'm a resource, but we also have lots of people and lots of practices that are gentle, right? So this isn't like confrontational. It's just that when you make a commitment to something that's called an intensive, well, it can get a little intense. And that's the whole point, right? We want to have breakthroughs. If we wanted to do the same darn thing, we just pony up to the bar and do the same old thing. But this is different. This is a different way of being.
Yeah. It's exciting.
So, you know, like if the $280 is prohibitive for you to turn in your application, I'd rather get your application than the $280. Just know that as a nonprofit, this is, you know, part of our important budget. So,
Right.
but don't, again, please don't ever let, and I'm saying this to everyone, you know, the money get in the way, because it's more important that you get trained up and that you, even if you're not going to teach, that you get the experience of going through the intensive. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that it, Jane? Did you have anything else?
Not that I can think of.
Okay.
I looked at the stuff a while ago, so I really should have looked at it before again. So if I have any questions, I'll let you know.
Okay.
I just wanted to tell you that I watched the Compassionate Warrior class that you did a couple of days ago. I watched it on YouTube today, and I loved it, and it really spoke to me. And you're a great teacher. So
Aw,
I just wanted to tell you that. As soon as it was over, my husband was right there. I turned around and I saw him. I said, "She's a really good teacher." So thank you for that. I enjoyed it.
thanks. Life has definitely taught me. Mark, did you have another question before we wrap up here?
Yeah, I do actually. I almost like, I'm curious to know, I don't know if I missed it, if you may have mentioned it, but how do we go about even applying for the partial scholarship? And it's like, I almost like don't even want to apply for it, because I know if I don't get it, that money will stay with you guys, and I want like to support Mind Oasis. But it's like I also lost my job. I'm about to move back to Wisconsin. I'm not 100% sure how I'm gonna be financially once I arrive, you know. But like you said, I don't want money to get into the way of this, because it's super like gonna be a super positive experience, I feel like, you know. Like since I started meditating, so many like negative habits I've started to let go and replace with positive ones, one being meditation. So I don't know, another really important question I wanted to point out or ask that you kind of brushed across a little was the intensity of the intensive and how it like upgrades your spirituality, what we should expect to notice with evolving of us personally and shedding of just old thought processes or behavior or addictions, habits. And then I wrote down qualities and alignments. I
Yeah.
don't know.
So let's start first with the scholarship process. It's really easy. You email me and you just let me know that you need a little help. And then as we get a little bit closer to the 15th, I'll respond to that. I have to make decisions before I leave. So the 15th is a pretty hard deadline. And then just know that we work with everyone. So whatever you need, we'll work with. It'll be okay. And you're not taking away from anyone. It's going to be fine. It all works out.
Okay.
Yeah, so folks just email me at kelly@mindoasis.org, because that's my email and my given name. So KELLY@mindoasis.org. And then as far as what you can expect, I'm going to actually encourage you and anyone else to ask some of the people who went through the intensive last year. So specifically, I would ask Autumn, Lena, Maria. I mean, Nick and Ruth went through the intensive, but I'm thinking about some folks who, Nick and Ruth both had a pretty strong meditation practice and a Buddhist practice. And let me come back to the Buddhism aspect, because I do want to touch on it, and then we'll go. I'm sorry, I know I just kept you a little bit longer than I thought. So I think you should ask other people what they experienced. And I just want you to know that I create an unbelievably safe container for you to experience whatever you experience. And if you've been enjoying community meditation and you feel like meditation has been bringing up some good stuff, as well as sort of like squashing some of the maybe patterns that you're not interested in holding anymore, then you're on the right track and you'll be just fine. Okay, so I say that to you. And then the other thing I just want to say is, you know, it's like everyone knows I'm a Tibetan Buddhist. And I just want you to know, this is not a Buddhist training. Nobody's going to try to make you into a Buddhist. I do depend pretty heavily on Buddhist techniques of meditation, but that has nothing to do with Buddhism as a religion. It has to do with the fact that they've been using meditation practices for over 2,500 years in order to work with their mind. And this is not about quieting your mind. Might happen. This is not about controlling your mind. You might be able to at least move your mind, you know, move your mind to the sound that's furthest away, move your mind to the sensation of air on your skin, things like that. This is about waking up to the full potential of your life. This life, not up here and not in, you know, maybe it's in here, but not out there. It's about waking up to your full potential by amplifying and aligning. When you align your life, then the amplification happens. It's amazing. It's awesome. And I think we have 16 or 18 people who could tell you what that really feels like. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. I'll definitely reach out to Lena and get her perception of what she experienced through the intensive.
Mm-hmm.
Also, this isn't really like a question toward the intensive, but I don't know if I'm just a weirdo or what, but when I meditate, I find, or I've noticed that after I meditate, I get really hungry and thirsty. And
Sure.
then, like, when I'm done meditating, I'm like running to drink water and have a snack or something.
You want me to tell you why?
Why?
Because when we meditate, we're moving our breath through our body. So you're, you know, most likely you're actually sort of revving up your body a little bit. And so it responds, right? It's like, oh my gosh, I just concentrated on something, which most of us are total shit at concentration these days. I mean, I can't even, it's so interesting, right? To try to read a book. I don't know, maybe this is just my experience, but like I used to read front to back a book. And now it's like I can read a few pages and then I find my mind going, oh, should I check social media? Or like I'm like a squirrel. With all this meditation practice, I'm still like a squirrel. So when you're in those classes and you're actually doing what you're supposed to do, you're concentrating and that takes energy and you're moving prana in your body. And prana is like breath, you could say, but it's more like the energy that the breath rides on.
Like infinite energy from the universe, yeah? Or
You can
no?
think of it like that, or you can just think of it like how the energy and the winds move in your body, how your breath moves in your body. Yeah. And so it's not unusual at all. At all. I usually feel like I really want to have like a cheeseburger. It's terrible. I don't know what the hell, but that's just me. All right.